A dead language may still be studied through recordings or writings, but it is still dead or extinct unless there are fluent speakers. Although languages have always become extinct throughout human history, they are currently dying at an accelerated rate because of globalization. Many projects are underway aimed at preventing or slowing language loss. Australia has a proud modern immigration history. Government discrimination has been banished, replaced by a skills-based system generating unparalleled economic gain for Australia. Creating an environment where innovation can thrive depends on immigration. With a population where 1 in 4 people are born overseas, Australia is already well positioned to kickstart a new period of growth. Hydropower is one of the renewable energies. In the past, hydropower was used for simple purposes by building a water wheel on a watercourse and using it to drive a mill or machine. Today this is how it works. The kinetic energy of the flowing water is converted into the mechanical energy of the turbine, which is converted into electrical energy, or electricity for short, in a generator. The American Cancer Society recommends following a healthy eating pattern for all ages. A new school year is a perfect time to try some healthier options for your child. Whether you're packing a lunch box or making lunch at the kitchen counter, you can ensure they're eating healthy food that tastes good. The Spanish language has a rich and complicated history. It has navigated the rise and fall of great empires, has been a symbol of cultural identity, and has both been used as a tool of unity and caused considerable divisiveness. Today, it is the world's second most spoken native language and is used by people in all corners of the globe. If a single medical objective could be applied to the entire range of cancers, it would be detecting the disease as soon as possible. At the highest level, finding any cancer early gives you the opportunity for curative treatments, says the CEO of a research funding organization. A diamond that formed deep in the Earth's mantle contains a mineral never seen before in nature. The discovery is a rare glimpse into the deep mantle and may help reveal new information about the structure of the planet at depths of more than 660 kilometers. This can help geologists better understand how the mantle controls the Earth's plate tectonics. Every metric ton of carbon dioxide humans emit comes at a cost not only in terms of the financial toll of the damage wrought by floods, heat waves, and droughts but also the price in human lives. Substantially curtailing emissions today could prevent tens of millions of premature deaths over the course of the century. When learning a foreign language, most people fall back on traditional methods: reading, writing, listening, and repeating. But if you also gesture with your arms while studying, you can remember the vocabulary better, even months later. Linking a word to brain areas responsible for movement strengthens the memory of its meaning. Many scholars attribute the 17th century belief that animals were mere machines devoid of fear, pain, or pleasure to the French mathematician, philosopher, and scientist. Animals' feelings, even if present, were morally irrelevant to Descartes, who attempted to prove his point by subjecting dogs and rabbits to exquisite torture. After the coldest night in South Florida in a decade, lizards were dropping out of palm trees, landing legs up. The scientists who raced to investigate the fallen reptiles have now found that, despite such graceless falls, some of these tropical, cold-blooded creatures are actually more resilient to cold than previously thought. Flooding is already the most common natural disaster in the United States, occurring in every state and killing more people each year than hurricanes, tornadoes, or lightning. As warming drives sea levels higher and intensifies hurricanes, more residents should expect to deal with flooding. Scientists already knew that the output of a single wind turbine could be improved with a windbreak. While windbreaks slow wind speed close to the ground, above the height of the windbreak, wind speeds actually increase as air rushes over the top. But for large wind farms, there's a drawback. To bridge gaps between teams, one tactic is to set aside more of the office to showcase the work of each department so that people who never encounter each other on Zoom can see examples of what their colleagues do. Another option is to play everyone with drink. Expect more space to be set aside for socializing and events. Today's global food system is responsible for around a third of greenhouse gas emissions, and meat production is one of the biggest culprits. Despite this environmental impact, meat eating is on the rise. Plant-based and lab-grown alternatives can convert carnivores away from conventional meat and reduce emissions. Feed crops are grown and harvested to feed livestock like cows and horses. Also known as animal feed, these crops can be grown and harvested like food crops. They can also be grown in large fields where animals can graze for the food. Feed crops are typically engineered to meet the livestock's specific nutritional needs. The amount of sunlight that Earth reflects back into space has decreased measurably in recent years. Whether the decline in Earthshine is a short-term blip or yet another ominous sign for Earth's climate is up in the air, scientists suggest. Studying how mouse brains process chemosignals will help researchers understand the general principles of how their brains form social memories and could help scientists identify what happens when these functions go wrong. Eventually, this may help scientists understand what happens in people whose ability to recognize others is impaired or those who have difficulties with social interactions caused by autism. The stratosphere is the next layer up from Earth's surface. Temperatures in the stratosphere increase with altitude. A high concentration of ozone, a molecule composed of 3 atoms of oxygen, makes up the ozone layer of the stratosphere. This ozone absorbs some of the incoming solar radiation, shielding life on Earth from potentially harmful ultraviolet light. People have used biomass energy from living things since the earliest cavemen first made wood fires for cooking or keeping warm. Biomass is organic, meaning it is made of material that comes from living organisms, such as plants and animals. The most common biomass materials used for energy are plants, wood, and waste. A simple barometric altimeter includes a sealed metal chamber, a spring, and a pointer that shows altitude in meters or feet. The chamber expands as air pressure decreases and contracts as it increases, bending the spring and moving the pointer. An altimeter can be mounted on an aircraft's instrumental panel or worn on a person's wrist. The ice house structures, of which 4 still remain intact, are located south of Sultan Kala. These large, conically domed earthen structures would have had sheets of ice built up on the ground level over the course of the winter to provide year-round ice supplies. The patriarchal family is one run by the father or eldest male of a household. He usually decides the duties of the women and children in the family. In this role, the patriarch solves family disputes and divides the family's wealth. The patriarch is also the spiritual leader of the family because he is thought to be the closest to the spirits of the family's ancestors. Medieval mapmakers supposedly inscribed the phrase "Here be dragons" on maps showing unknown regions of the world. Unfortunately, apart from an inscription on a globe, this claim is unfounded. Although there were no dragons, and the inscription was virtually never used, some of the purported earliest mapmakers did have to deal with real and formidable megafauna. Medieval mapmakers supposedly inscribed the phrase "Here be dragons" on maps showing unknown regions of the world. Unfortunately, apart from an inscription on a globe, this claim is unfounded. Although there were no dragons, and the inscription was virtually never used, some of the purported earliest mapmakers did have to deal with real and formidable megafauna. The scientists found that the division of reproductive labor in ants arose when an ancient insulin signaling pathway, typically involved in maintaining nutrition and growth, became responsive to social cues. In doing so, they also uncovered deeper insights into a process underlying how the environment gets under the skin to affect behavior, physiology, and the health and well-being of other members of society. The idea of self-disseminating vaccines has floated through epidemiological circles for decades, conceived mainly as a tool for protecting the health of wildlife. But evolutionary biologists have refreshed the proposal with evidence from their own modeling and other experimental work. No planet will have a complex form of life that popped into existence all on its own. Whatever life is like on an alien planet, it must have begun simply. But if life is to achieve any kind of complexity, the only way that complexity can accumulate is if favorable changes and innovations are retained and unfavorable ones are lost. According to Einstein's general theory of relativity, the gravity of a black hole is so intense that nothing can escape it. The more sophisticated understanding of black holes developed by Stephen Hawking and his colleagues did not question this principle. Hawking and others sought to describe matter in and around black holes using quantum theory, but they continued to describe gravity using Einstein's classical theory. Over the past 5 years, through studies of the simplest conceivable clocks, the researchers have discovered the fundamental limits of timekeeping. They've mapped out new relationships between accuracy, information, complexity, energy and entropy, the quantity whose incessant rise in the universe is closely associated with the arrow of time. The mathematical language for talking about connections, which usually depends on networks' vertices and edges, has been an invaluable way to model real-world phenomena. But a few decades ago, the emergence of giant data sets forced researchers to expand their toolboxes and, at the same time, gave them sprawling sandboxes to apply new mathematical insights.